Okay, hello everyone, and we're not going to waste any time here. We're just going to run into our next game, Spyro Orange, the Cortex Conspiracy. This is going to be an any percent done by Tocaloni1.
Indeed it is. Hello.
Welcome, and you're definitely doing one of the more interesting Spyro GBA games.
Obviously, yeah.
So, do you want to tell us a little about this game? Because I think out of all the GBA games, this is definitely one of the ones that people tend to be less familiar with.
I wonder why. So this is the Spyro GB, the handheld game which came after the one you saw previously on this marathon. So Attack of the Rhinox was 2003. This one came out 2004, together with a game called Crash Fusion, so kind of its sister game, if you will. And you won't see too much of that connection in this run, in the any percent run, but in the full completion run, you have to play both games, like in co-op or whatever, to actually be able to achieve full completion. So the fusion, as it's called in Europe, Spyro Fusion, that word was chosen for a reason.
Awesome. Well, best of luck on your run.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'll just introduce that whenever I start and you start the timer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'd say let's get going in 3, 2, 1, fusion. Right. So actually there was a plan to have 7 Erasers 7, another Spyro Fusion runner, have commentate with me. Sadly, he's not able to join due to some internet problems on his side, which, I mean, just happens. I'm just doing it on my own. But to honor him, to honor our fallen hero, I guess I can just kind of redo the introduction, but in French. So, bonjour à tous, mon nom est Tocaloni1. Aujourd'hui, je présenterai Spyro Fusion, 90%. I think that's enough. I think that's enough French for like the rest of the decade. Right, so Spyro Fusion, or Spyro Orange as it's called in the schedule, rightfully so, because that's just the US name for the game, is a GBA game. It's GBA, it's a handheld game, and it really is a minigame collection. There's no way to sugarcoat it. That's just what the game is, sadly or luckily. It kind of depends on your preferences. But the structure of the game is pretty straightforward. So you have your overworld. So we start in Brink Castles, then we move on to Arctic Cliffs, Fire Mountains, the Wampa Jungle, and then the Tech Park. Those are the 5 overworlds, and each of the overworlds we have to do 5 minigames. Usually, so the intended way, kind of, to beat the game is to beat every minigame 3 times. Because only then you'll be able to advance into the final world, the Tech Park. The game is actually pretty bad at communicating that, because only after you get to that kind of portal which checks whether you're allowed to enter Tech Park or not, whether you've completed everything 3 times. Before you get to that portal, nothing tells or indicates that you have to do that in order to win. So that's cool and not frustrating at all if you're playing the game for the first time. So imagine it's like the year 2004, you're 9 years old, got this game in your GBA, and then you play every minigame once. It's kind of, it's all right, but it's not the most fun game you've ever played in your rich life. Rich 9-year life so far. And then you get to the start of the 5th world, and then there's the professor saying, so to unlock this you have to redo everything like 2 more times. And what you probably do at this point is you take out the cartridge, you restart your Game Boy Advance SP probably, and you play something fun instead. So that's, at least from my experience and from how I estimate kids to be when it comes to video games. I would say that's how 95% of the encounters with Spyro Fusion went. And only years after I joined the 5% of people who actually completed this game. Right, so that's the intended way how to beat the game. However, that would take around 1 hour 20 if we really did that, which used to be the 80% world record up until 2 years ago or last year. I always forget when we found this skip, which you'll see in like 20 minutes from now. And I'll explain how this works eventually, once we encounter this tech for the first time. So there's a tech I'll introduce, which is used for this huge skip, by means of which you only have to beat everything once. It speeds up the run by 35 or 40 minutes. But it's not used only for that. It's also used for some smaller time saves, ranging from like a few seconds to like 15 seconds, 20, something like that, and eventually 35 minutes. One small side effect of not beating every minigame 3 times is that we are, if we wouldn't think about it at all, we would be short on money in the end, on gems, because every, like unlocking a portal, unlocking a minigame costs you gems. In the first world it's 10, second world 20, third world 30, and so forth. And you of course get gems by beating a minigame. I mean, not of course, you get gems by beating a minigame. If you beat it the first time, it's 10 gems. The second time it's a bit more difficult, you get 20 gems, and the third pass is the hardest one, you get 30 gems back. So, I mean, you can just quickly do the math, do a minigame 3 times, get 60 gems, and at most you pay 50. So no matter what you do, you will never be short on gems if you do this the intended way. However, we don't. So the further we progress, the more expensive things become. We only get 10 gems back, because we complete every minigame only once. So we have to be a bit mindful when it comes to our gems and collecting large gems in the overworld. It's really the theme of this game. Aside from one small, well, not really detour, but extension of the route, the gems we collect on our path will suffice for the most part. So we can really focus on beating the minigames. And as you saw, minigames, unlike the previous GBA games like Season of Ice, Season of Flame, and that was close, and Attack of the Rhinox, minigames here, or the gameplay really is a minigame in the sense of not a jump and run. So it's not your typical Spyro game, just like Crash Fusion, the sister game, is not your typical Crash game. It's just, it's a bit weird. It's not bad. It's just, you have to get used to it a bit, I would say. But once you did this, can actually be fun in its own masochistic way, I guess. Okay, so what we did there was a menu warp. That sounds like a glitch. It's really not. What you do when menu warping... Also, this is Crash, the first boss. So what you do when menu warping is you just go back to the main menu, like to the screen where you can select your save file. And in that case, the current position Spyro's in is not being saved. So you automatically get warped, quote-unquote warped, back to the start of the world you're currently in. Right, so like before I did the Crash boss, I did the previous pinball minigame. I was at the very end of the first world, like the second half of the first world, and after doing this quote-unquote menu warp, that's how we call it, I was back at the start of the second half, saving quite some time, which just need to backtrack. It's like, I don't know, 5 seconds or so. It's not that much. But it's better than, well, having to do the backtrack. So those are the small optimizations I was talking about. You can do by all kinds of warps. So this one is not a glitch. The kind of warp we'll use to completely break the game, that one will be a glitch, and I'll explain that in due time. But for now, we are flying through the Arctic tundra or whatever, like wherever this even is. Who knows? Could be Stockholm or whatever. So unsurprisingly, the minigames are grouped together, as in there are, for example, there are several pinball minigames. There are a few minigames like this where you fly in something, whatever that is. I honestly don't know what that's supposed to be, this blue thing we're currently in. Might as well be an enlarged Game Boy where some of the pieces have, like some of the corners have been cut off. I don't know. And then some of the minigames you'll just fly through and so forth. I mean, you get the idea. There will be a recurring theme. And no minigame will only appear once. That includes the faster minigames and the more fun ones, like pinball one or this one, and also the slower ones, like tank minigame we had at the very start of the run, or the minigame we'll see after that, which is will also be kind of slow, because it's an autoscroller. That's the problem with this game, or speedrunning this game. Any warp here. That's kind of the problem with this game, is that the only real optimization you can do is in overworld movement. Most of the minigames, not all of them, but most of them are autoscrollers. And for example, in this minigame, the only thing you can do to save time, or the only thing you can optimize, is how early you go into the final portal, like leaving the level or finishing the level as quickly as possible, as in ending it as early as possible. That's really the only thing you can do. In the completionist categories, where you have to play every minigame 3 times, and you have to also do the more difficult passes of these minigames, then you really have to learn certain enemy patterns, especially in World 5, which is the hardest one, for some minigames at least. Certain enemy patterns, certain routes. You might have to learn strats how to despawn enemies, just by getting them off screen and then they disappear, shenanigans like that. But for the any percent run, it's a really chill and easy run. It's cool and glitches, and it doesn't drag on as much, I would say. The current world record is 34 minutes, as opposed to the 1 hour 20 I was talking about before, the record before finding the big skip. And the tech we'll use for the skip we'll actually see in, I don't know, like 30 seconds from now, 20, 30 seconds. After this minigame is over, we'll execute the glitch for the first time. The glitch or the tech will be called limbo warping. And the fundamental ingredient for this is portal. Yeah. The fundamental ingredient is that there is a party mode, as you see here. So you, in principle, can replay minigames you've played already, like together with friends or whatever. But we do that to completely, break the game, really. Luckily, this minigame is slow, and I can focus on explaining. So in this party mode where you have all the minigames, there's a tab for each world. So there's a tab for all the minigames you have played in the Dragon world, and one for the Arctic world, and so forth. And the idea really is that whoever programmed the game didn't know what they were doing, maybe, I don't know. But after you change tabs, so you change from the, let's say, the tab for the Dragon Castles minigames to the Arctic Cliffs, there's a window of a few frames where if you select a minigame within that, the game is still lagging from loading in things. and you don't load in the mini game you want to play, but you load into the world. So there you saw me load into the overworld of the Arctic cliffs. But there's a small difference. So it's not really the world of your save file, like of your adventure mode save file. It's a copy of it, kind of what's called limbo. And the only thing you can influence is, or the only meaningful thing you can influence in this limbo world, in this copy of the main world, is where Spyro's checkpoint is. Within that world. So what happened, and you'll be able to observe that in like a few times throughout this run. So maybe things by then will make more sense. So when I executed this glitch, I was in the first half of the Arctic cliffs. I just completed this like snow steps, the minigame where you flip up and down with magnet boots or whatever. And come on. Then I executed the glitch. I went from the end of I went from this in the limbo world. I went from the start of World 2 to the end of World 1 just by going backwards. But that set my checkpoint to the end of World 2 in the adventure mode. Might be a bit confusing for now, but it will become pretty evident or pretty clear how this works. The more I do it. Next up is in like a few minutes. And so the key to really understand what this does is that you cannot change the world you're in your adventure mode save file. You can only change the checkpoint Spyro's at within this world. So by means of limbo, it's impossible to go from world 2 to world 3, let's say. Your main save file. However, you can go back and forth between the first and second half, bypassing certain requirements the game might have for you to progress. That works. And if I'm lucky, then this works as well, and we win. That was optimal crash and kill. That's cool. A small anecdote for that boss fight. Small anecdote for this boss fight. And I always tell it like every marathon run. But it is kind of funny. So for the longest time, we were under the impression that the pattern in the crash and gallop fight is random. That not crash crush. That Gulp was just shooting these ice projectiles wherever, and there's no meaningful way to influence it. I have no idea why we thought that. Probably we were just too lazy or something, or we didn't care enough. But once we actually investigated it, we saw the pattern is really easy, and it's literally shown at the start of the fight, like before Crush even comes in. The dummy projectiles show exactly what the pattern will be, and based on that, we were able to manipulate the fight. Well, not really manipulate, but find optimal strats to do it as quickly as possible. So that fight is now fully planned and fast. That's cool. Also more UFO. Like, what is it? We could actually have a poll on that. What is Spyro currently sitting in? What do you want it to be? What is it in your imagination? Because this, to me, this leaves so much room for interpretation. It's actually ridiculous. Yeah, that tech I'm doing there is called a flame drop. UFO? I mean, yeah. I agree on that. Come on. So the flame drop is like falling really fast at a ledge. I have no idea why that really happens. I just know how it works. and like it's probably it's probably tied to the flaming animation. And so what happens is if you flame at the right moment, you have a few frames to do that, then Spyro will just drop straight down. So as I said, probably because the flaming animation overrides the usual falling down animation. Just a guess. Okay, so after this one is another Molotov one where the game really lags because nobody bothered to test this, apparently. And there are also some really funny glitches that can happen here, but they cost time, so I hope they don't happen. So here's another Limbo Warp. So here we go from the start of World 2, like Limbo World 2, to the end of Limbo World 1, and that spawns us in at the end of real World 3, right? Because we were in World 3 to begin with, can't change that, but you can change where we spawn in. So that's the idea. X-Wing, Starfighter. Guys, I love all of these, really. I'm a fan. Also keep in mind that these warps I'm doing to manipulate my checkpoint in the main world, up until now they're not necessary, they're just saving time. Because whenever you pass from the first to the second half of a certain home world or overworld, you have to do a small mini game, taking from like between 5 and 20-25 seconds, depends on which one you're doing. And of course the Limbo Warp, well, first of all, it's really easy and quick to execute. And second of all, you don't have to do the mini game in between. You can just kind of jump around it, if you will. Although not as literal, but you know, in a figurative sense. And I'm saying this now because the minigame connecting the first and second half of this world, the Fire Mountains world, takes 20 seconds. Well, it takes 15 seconds in the US version, cause cool, but really around about 20 seconds in the European version. Either way, you can just skip it. So this is probably the most lucrative time save we're getting out of Limbo Warp, aside from, of course, the 40-minute skip at the very end. The end is, yeah. So right now I could warp up to the portal. I don't necessarily have to go around, but if I do, I collect these yellow gems here, giving 10 gems each, and I really need them. I really need the gem count to be high enough to unlock all the minigames in World 5, in the Tech Park world. So sadly, I just have to take that detour. There's no real way around it. Yeah, also this is Nina. A fun fact about this boss. So what we're doing right now, you know, freeing the Professor and Coco, that's only the first half of the boss, and the second half, which is caging Nina, that's done in Crash Fusion. So the boss fight at the end of the third world in Crash Fusion really picks up where this boss fight leaves off. So that's kind of a cool connection, I guess. And maybe a quick word about full completion. Just so I mention it, really. It's not important to this run, of course. But some interesting trivia, maybe. So for the full completion, you have to, well, of course, complete every minigame 3 times. But the main collectible in this run are trading cards. So there are 100 trading cards for Spyro and 100 trading cards for Crash. So like 100 trading cards with Spyro motives, or Spyro's friends or enemies or worlds or whatever, you get the idea, and for Crash. And if you just play this game to its own full completion, you can only acquire 120 of those 200 total cards. So if you want full completion, as in full completion, all cards, which also gives you a special title screen as confirmation that you got everything, then you have to play Spyro as well as Crash and then trade back and forth by connecting the two like GBAs or like devices you play on. Which does make for a really cool co-op run, the world record of which is currently at like 150-ish, I believe. It has been a while. Is it 150? 140? Guys, I don't remember. It has been too long. It's also like 8 AM for me, so beg my pardon. Yeah, indeed. So the concept, the idea of having these two games complement each other, the idea is really cool. However, the final product is not as intriguing as you put it. You know, it's not bad by any means. It's just, it's a bit off. It could have been a lot better, but it's not terrible. It's a little mediocre, if you want. As a casual experience, at least. The speedrun is, at least I would argue, the speedrun is kind of cool because of all the tech we have. We implement to save time. But yeah, so I agree. The execution has been average at best, sadly. Okay, another Molotov, like bridge, whatever, minigame. And so fun fact about the lag in this level comes, or so I believe, comes from the graphics in the background. Because, oh no, that was my fault. Because there will be another of these bridge levels in the tech park, but the background will be spaced. There will not be any animation tied to that. Ah, come on. And then the lag is mostly gone. Well, if it isn't Spyro Fusion expert and last year's commentator, Uruguay's very own Cameron Vengeance. What's up, dude? Right, so the Limbo Warp I did here has a little special to it. So not only did I change checkpoints, saving a lot of backtrack and this connection minigame in between, but I also connected some of the large gems in the Limbo world, which did count. No, I have no idea what I'm doing. The large gems in the Limbo world. Those do not respawn indefinitely, but they are, in a weird way, tied to the large gems of the world you're currently in. Right, because the whole gimmick of the large gems is that they only spawn once. Unlike the red gems, you can only collect them one time. Once you collect them, they're gone. They will never spawn in again. So that's why the Limbo gems don't respawn indefinitely. But it's a really weird connection. It's no real point or no real gain in explaining how that works. Just be advised or just let me know they're connected somehow, and that's good enough for now. Anyway, when mentioning this, why I collected these yellow gems is because they're really on the way or just very slightly off track. And those are, I think, 44 gems we're getting for free. We really need those gems to. We really need those gems for the final world to be able to pay for everything, open every minigame. And that really is the fastest way to get gems which are not directly on track, like on the route. That's a final trap there. If you stay in the middle, then you die. So that's funny, apparently. At Vicarious Visions. Luckily, this is also the last tank level. The tank level really is the slowest and least interesting type of minigame, just because the scrolling speed is so slow, and the duration of the tank minigame is somewhere between 1 minute 30, and this one is 2 minutes per pass. I mean, it's not much you can do other than endure it, I guess. Also, the gameplay here is not too interesting just because the minigame is so easy. The only thing that makes the minigame somewhat difficult sometimes is the fact that you don't have any iframes. If you get hit by the tank, no iframes. It's only the case there. Nowhere else in the game do you not have iframes after getting hit. Whyever that is. So small strat in Cortex, you can hit him despite his shield if he flies into your rocket. And that offsets his cycle and just end up finishing the fight earlier, saving 9 seconds. So from now on it's, oops, 2 more rockets, 1 more. That one's on top here. And boom. So here we are. Because we're in a marathon, I'll show this off. So here is the portal. We need to defeat all the minigames 3 times in order to open this portal. But we won't. So whatever you say, Professor, I am above the law. And here we are, Tech Park. The way this works is I would say pretty interesting. So what you know by now is that you can warp within a world, so you can warp back and forth between the first and the second half of, let's say, Fire Mountains, the third world. But you can't warp in between worlds. However, how the game handles Tech Park internally is really interesting and the key for the skip to work. Because this portal, I just showed you where the professor is in front of, and he's like, you shall not pass. This portal is game internally handled as the first half of Tech Park, although it kind of is Tech Park, but not really. And actual Tech Park is the second half of Tech Park. We can warp back and forth, thus bypassing this barrier. That's the whole idea. Can you do it 3 times for fun? Yeah. So if Cam donates like, I don't know, $1,000, then I'll do it. Setting the schedule behind by like 40 minutes. Ah, that's a shame. That's a shame. That was lucky. Okay. Yeah. So to summarize is you're using the party mode. Or rather, you glitch out the party mode. You get into a limbo version of the original world, which allows you to warp from in front of the portal, in front of the barrier, to behind the barrier. That's really the whole idea. So we don't break open the barrier, we just go around it by unintended means, thus saving 35 minutes within 5 seconds of gameplay. Okay, now. Thank you very much for the sub. I appreciate it a lot. So this is the second to last minigame. World 5 is pretty quick. There's only one slow type of minigame. All the others are fast, like pinball, tug war, the bridge Molotov minigame. Those are all fast. This one is like decently fast, like 1 minute 15 or so, I believe. Round about that. And only the last minigame before the final boss takes 2 minutes. But other than that, we're mostly done. We're also good on gems because this is a 25, this is a blue one, and we need 50 to unlock it, being 3 gems over, well, what we need, basically. In 80%, this minigame is really not too difficult. It's very lenient on like the routes you can take, the enemies you can shoot, and so forth. And also the number of enemies is rather low, and not many enemies spawning in. However, the second and third pass, both of these are pretty difficult the first times around, and you really have to straight up learn how to maneuver through those. Just because there's like this leniency of the first pass is not a thing anymore. Basically, every mistake means you're getting hit, losing one of your 3 or 4 health points. Depends how you define it. Got its innovation from. I'll just go ahead and dine that cam. I want like no comment. Small skip you can do here. You can just run off, barely making it to the ceiling. I don't think that's intended, but it works. Doesn't save time because, well, it's an autoscroller. That's just how autoscrollers work. But it's in this pass it's cool. In the more difficult passes of this level, it's very useful because you don't encounter some of the more difficult enemies. So time is coming up in a minute from now or so, roughly. Just so whoever is responsible is ready. This was the last minigame. Now the final boss is unlocked, which is rather fitting for this fusion theme. Cortex and Ripto together. And all we have to do is to destroy their ship, and we win. Well, not time is in a bit, but principle we already have won. Time is now, and congratulations, we did it. Hopefully we won't be hearing from those two again. Thanks for all the help, Crash. Well, Crash didn't really do anything from our perspective, but as I explained, if you play both games together, you'll know that Crash did something, I guess. At least he didn't do anything. At least he didn't do nothing, sorry. We'll be seeing you around, Spyro. You can count on it.
Alright, and GG Tocaloni1.
Thank you.
That was a great run. If we're interested...
35, okay, that's cool. Sorry, just the final time in chat. So 35 is pretty decent for a marathon run. As I said, world record is like mid 34.
Oh wow, that is good.
Yeah.
So if people are looking to watch some more of Spyro Fusion, where can they find you, and where do you think they should go to start playing the game if they're interested?
Yeah, so there's this very elaborate thing called private DM group between like 9 people. So yeah, in principle, we're all in the Spyro Discord as well, in the handheld section. It's just that recently this game hasn't seen that much activity, sadly, but of course everyone is should feel very much invited to try out the any percent run for one, because it's a really it's a really unique experience, I would say. Let's put it like that.
Unique in what way?
That you have such a huge skip, and you can circumvent playing most of the game, which is boring.
Right.
So you really up the ratio of doing of fun things. That's the best I can say, really.
No, definitely understand there.
Right.
So to anyone who is interested, Phoenix has linked Tocaloni's Twitch channel and chat. Feel free to follow him there. And next up, we're going to have a Spyro Reignited trilogy, Spyro 120%. And I'm also going to be handing off the hosting to Nost, who will be hosting for the rest of the night. So thank you once again, and see you
Thank you very
guys
much.
later.